Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Pick Army Wild Card Weekend Preview Show. I'm John. That's Erik. Let's take a look at the Sunday slate of games. We've got Ravens at Titans plus 3.5. Erik, let's dive into this game and take a look.
Best game of the weekend here, John, because of what the Titans did to the Ravens in the playoffs last year. These are pretty comparable offenses. Titans fourth in scoring, Ravens are seventh. But the reason I'm going to go with Baltimore here and lay the points on the road is that the defenses tell a different story. The Baltimore Ravens, second best in points allowed on defense, while Tennessee is ranked 24th. Simply put, Tennessee's defense isn't what it was a year ago. Losses of, for example, Jarrell Casey really hurt this team. Currently 25th in opponent yards per play, dead last in third down defense, 28th in red zone defense. They're allowing 78% of red zone trips to score touchdowns. And over the last 3 games, that number's at over 71%. This team has no pass rush and really needs a rebuild. They need an injection of youth and ability on the defensive side of the ball. Tennessee lost some key free agents, as I had mentioned in our preview. Jack Conklin and Jarrell Casey were the two that I mentioned. And boy, is that Casey loss really hurting them. I think the Ravens are a limited team in some ways, but man, they are so much better on defense than Tennessee is. I think Lamar Jackson has a chip on his shoulder. He doesn't want to fall into Andy Dalton territory, going 0-3 in his first 3 playoff games. I think Baltimore has a chance to really roll here. In fact, for all of you who like adjusted lines, I'm not allergic to laying 5.5, 7.5, maybe even 9.5 here. I think Baltimore wins this game and they win handily. This is my best bet of Sunday. Ravens minus 3.5 at Tennessee Titans.
Absolutely agree with you. Lamar Jackson and this running attack, unbelievable. 400 yards in week 17 from the running, from just the running game. Unreal. You can't defend against that. And then you couple that with the fact that in these matchups, Titans Baltimore over the history of the NFL, the road team is 4-0 here. Baltimore's coming into Tennessee. Tennessee barely limped into the playoffs as the division leader. I think that's a gift for Baltimore. Baltimore rolls here, I agree. Any concerns?
Derrick Henry, best running back in the NFL for my money. And anytime you have a player at that caliber, that can certainly tip the scales.
Bears at Saints, minus 10. Let's take a look, man, and talk about this game real quick.
John, I'm going to take the points with the Bears here, and I'll tell you why. At this point in the year, a lot of bettors have gotten used to teams quitting. And the reason is the consideration set from week 16 and 17. You have teams that are, say, 4-11 going into week 17. They get down 13 points in the fourth quarter, and it just becomes a business decision to take the rest of the year off. Nobody wants to break an arm or hurt a knee in a meaningless game, particularly at the very end of the game and the very end of the season. But that's the reason I'm taking the Bears here. This number is now climbed up to the magic 10. And as long as I'm getting 10 or better, I'm going to go with this defense. I don't think this team is going to quit. And I know Mitchell Trubisky has had his issues, but we were talking 6 weeks ago about Matt Nagy maybe getting fired here. This won't happen in the playoffs where the Bears give up. Trubisky, Nagy, this defense, even if the Saints stop the Bears from getting their rushing game going, and they might, as the Saints are ranked 4th in opponent yards per rush, you got to remember the Saints are 29th in opponent red zone scoring, 68% on the season. And over the last 3 games, the Saints have been allowing touchdowns on 71% of opponent red zone trips. That's terrible. Points per game, it's about a 7-point difference over the course of the season and over the last 3 games. This line opened New Orleans minus 9 to minus 9.5. It's now at 10, and that's a very significant number. I don't think the upset's coming. It wouldn't shock me because of Drew Brees' age, and because, frankly, I think the Saints are a little overrated, but I do think it's just too many points to be giving up. This is more of a lean than a like for me, but I am going to take the points with the Bears here, visiting New Orleans on Sunday.
Agree with the Bears pick, taking the points here.
This one just has backdoor cover written all over it, and there is a concern here, and that is that the Saints may have the best top to bottom roster in the NFL. I mean, they are loaded. They have hit on so many draft picks. It's not even funny, and late round draft picks to boot. And not to mention, they're going to be really motivated. Drew Brees has said definitively that this is it for him. So they would love to see him ride off into the sunset with a Super Bowl win. And frankly, the Bears really had no business making the playoffs this year. They got blown out last week by the Packers and needed a Cardinals loss to sneak into the playoffs here. With a 500 record. So there isn't a ton to like with the Bears as far as the overall matchup here. But again, pros bet numbers, not teams. I don't see an upset, but a backdoor cover somewhere around, say, like 20 to 29 or 23 to 30, somewhere in there. I see the Bears getting back into the game late, and the Saints not really worrying about it, because by the time the Bears get within 2 scores, they get within 10, the game's really going to be over by then.
Yeah, I agree with that analysis as well. As you said, we get into the fourth quarter, it's over a 10-point lead. They're going to take their foot off the gas because they do have an aging quarterback. They want to make sure that guys are rested and are locked and loaded for the next weekend. So I definitely see a backdoor cover here being a possibility, and definitely agree with that analysis as well. Browns at Steelers, -6. Let's take a look at this game, man, and dive in.
Steelers are dead last in yards per rush. They simply cannot run the ball. I got to tell you, I think Pittsburgh, 6 weeks ago, they were an undefeated team, and in my opinion, a total paper tiger, 26th in yards per play overall. And not to mention the Steelers, they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games. I'm taking the points with the Browns here, +6. Although I will say this, I had mentioned this in the Saturday show, how my advice is, if you agree with me and you're going to take the points in the late game on either day, you're going to take the underdog, wait until before kickoff, because you're going to have a lot of novice money that didn't do well in the first 2 games buy in heavily on the favorite, in this case the Steelers, buy in and drive that line up. You may be able to get, I'm not kidding, I wouldn't be surprised if this line got up to 7.5, 8, even 8.5 before kickoff. And if you do that, then you have to take the points. Mason Rudolph is not an NFL quarterback, but with how Ben Roethlisberger has played this year, he really wasn't that much of a drop-off. I know the Browns had trouble with him, but that's because the Steelers played a really good game, a disciplined game, the kind of game that they haven't played over the last 4 to 5 weeks. Rushing attack for the Browns is still the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. Nick Chubb looks like a total stud. I know they're going to be losing an all-pro guard due to COVID, and I know their head coach isn't going to be there, but does that really make that big of a difference when you talk about the number? Cleveland has not been to the playoffs in 17 years. I think they come out motivated. This is what Baker Mayfield needs to start cementing the kind of legacy that he's looking for. He's a very confident guy, good for him, but I think he plays loose here, and I think they're gonna be able to keep this one pretty tight. I think the Steelers are a good team, but not nearly as good as their record would have indicated a month and a half ago. An upset, I'm not going to go that far to call it, but I do like the Browns and the points here. And again, if you agree with me, wait until Sunday, because you will be able to get close to, at least 6.5. But this one might even get over that magic 7, at which case the value skyrockets.
I agree with you, Eric. I think the Browns and the points are definitely the way to go here. Any concerns at all?
Yeah, John, Pittsburgh's defense, 3rd in opponent points per game, 5th in third down defense. This is a real D. Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt, reigning MVP, or reigning Defensive Player of the Year, rather. Minka Fitzpatrick has looked like, has been worth every bit of the first-round pick that they paid for him. This is a real defense that plays hard. Now, they have lost a few key starters, Bud Dupree, for example, and that's a problem. But Pittsburgh's defense could, in theory, put a lid on what Cleveland is trying to do here. That being said, with that rushing attack, I don't think they're able to do it. The defense here for Pittsburgh, it's certainly a concern, but I think Cleveland's rushing attack is just too strong. I don't think it becomes a major factor here. Cleveland, again, not an upset. I want those points without a doubt.
One stat to throw out here, Big Ben is 23-2-1 against the Browns. Now, remember, that goes back to years when the Browns were pulling 0-16 seasons. So I don't think this is the same Big Ben. I don't think this is the same team. Yeah, Pittsburgh's defense tough, but Browns plus the 6 points, I like that definitely.
I think that's very similar to Brady's record against the Jets and the Bills. I mean, before Josh Allen, the Bills couldn't get anything right for 2 decades. And so, Brady was able to clean up. Same thing with Big Ben. I mean, he's been in this league now with the doormat Browns and the doormat Bengals. Put Big Ben in the AFC West or in the NFC East, and I don't think he has nearly the success that he's had in Pittsburgh. 2 Super Bowl champions. You can't take that away. I think there's only 12 quarterbacks that have started the Super Bowl and won it twice. So that's rare air, to say the least. But my faith in Big Ben, I think it might be time for Big Ben to hang him up. And I think this is the game where that conversation really gets going, particularly if Cleveland is able to get the upset, which I wouldn't rule out. But again, give me those points.
Well, there you go, guys. Thank you so much for the insight, Erik. For Erik, I'm John. Everybody have a great weekend, and thanks for stopping by.
Good stuff, man.